Disconnected, a WRAL documentary presented by NCLM, Google Fiber, and the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. The following program is shot in 4K high dynamic range and broadcast in high definition from Capital Broadcasting Company.
In our internet age, there's a need for speed.
It's going to keep getting faster in the future, too. It's a moving target.
Right now, downloading a 45-minute TV show at a speed of 1 gigabit or 1,000 megabits per second takes about a second. At 100 megs, it takes about 16 seconds. At 25, the FCC standard for high-speed internet, it takes a minute. And at 3 megs, about the speed of a DSL connection, it takes 8 minutes.
Everyone is now starting to realize that broadband access is just as important to our future as electricity and water treatment was 150 years ago.
But many people living in rural communities have no internet, or they have slow internet, dial-up, which is less than 1 megabit per second.
Broadband accessibility is very, very sketchy.
A lack of broadband is bad for business owners.
I need broadband. Desperately.
Bad for students.
Our test scores are showing that it is impacting us there.
And bad for patients.
It's a barrier for their health care.
While most of us take a high-speed internet connection for granted, many living in rural areas feel disconnected.
Enfield's a small rural town here in northeastern North Carolina in Halifax County. Very amazing people here, close-knit community, about 2,600 here. The economy is a little economically depressed.
Halifax is what's called a Tier 1 county, meaning among the poorest in the state.
Those Tier 1 counties, finances are a lot more scarce. Opportunities are a lot more scarce, so jobs are a lot more scarce, and so your median income are a lot lower than what you would find across the state.
Not exactly a profitable market for most internet service providers.
A small Tier 1 town that sits on the edge of a Tier 1 county, not gonna draw those vendors to that place.
This is what Freeman hears from businesses he tries to recruit.
I understand the advantages of doing business in a small town, lower cost of operations, things of that nature, but can I do business in your town? And what they're really asking me is, how accessible to the rest of the world am I? And so broadband accessibility is the ability to really plug into tomorrow's business and put yourself in a position where you can be really successful.
Broadband is not just about attracting new businesses, but also keeping existing ones.
If it's not there, then those people are going to leave. Not necessarily because they want to, but because they have to.
Doug Dawson has worked in the telecom industry for more than 40 years. He's now a consultant in the broadband industry.
Most of the state and the towns have pretty decent broadband. As soon as you get outside of all of these towns, including Raleigh, there are people with no broadband at their house. Money is exactly why we don't have rural broadband. It's very expensive to build broadband in rural areas. There's not many companies around willing to make those long-term investments.
Southern Secrets at Mears in downtown Enfield is a place for local and regional artists and craftspeople to show and sell their work.
The success of this business is very dependent on a website.
That's where most of the items in this store are sold.
The artwork sells. It's a lot of originals, so therefore we need to be able to run the website with new items going on there frequently. And for it to be slow, it hinders us a great deal. we're constantly traveling to somewhere that we have the access we need in order to do website updates and in order to access the internet at a speed that we can get our work done.
All right, so Raven, let's grab 6 and 2.
13-year-old Raven Silver does a lot of traveling to find high-speed internet access, too. She's got it at her school, Enfield Middle STEAM Academy, but
You're looking at about 60% of our students who do not have internet access at the home. And that impacts our learning because many of our resources that are within the building that we want students to work on outside of school, they're internet-based.
Filling in our numbers.
everything from assignments to tests.
Because they are not having that internet access at home, I would say yes, our test scores are showing that it is impacting us there.
Could I have one person come to the board and graph it?
Teachers sometimes let students stay after school to use the internet, and the school opens on Saturdays so parents can bring their children in to use it. Otherwise,
They may have to drive 30 minutes to go to the Starbucks or to a McDonald's or to a Sheetz to tap into the Wi-Fi.
Raven's mom says she has satellite internet at home.
But if it's raining or if it's snowing, you don't have it.
It was more of a group effort.
And she says when it is working, it's often slow. They sometimes use a cell phone for internet access, but
You go some places and you don't have it. Where other kids have done it.
And they follow.
since about 75% of Raven's schoolwork requires internet access, that means trips to the local library.
It's a lot of running around. As a parent, to me, I have to provide what I can for her. If I don't provide it for her, she's gonna lose out.
He
So
don't
is
look
that
as
statue
tall
in
as he.
Greensboro? We gotta use what we can get because high speed is not offered to us.
And Raven knows what it's like for kids with high-speed internet.
They have a lot of more opportunities than we do.
Hello, Mr. Clemens, how are you?
Mary Downey is a family nurse practitioner in Enfield. She says most of her patients have little to no internet access.
Okay, how things been going since the last time you were here?
Yeah, it's doing all right.
A lot of people depend on their cell phone service for their internet access, but if they actually live outside of the city limits in any given direction, they probably don't have any access to internet at all.
That includes her own staff.
About 40% don't have any type of internet access at home.
A nonprofit called the Rural Health Group runs this clinic. It has a website with a portal that patients can access to get their medical information like lab results.
If they have any questions or concerns about their medications, they can send me a virtual encounter that I can respond to. But we need the internet access in order to do that. Any pain with that?
No pain.
Walter Clement recently had cancer surgery at Duke. High-speed internet could provide telemedicine connecting him directly to his doctors at Duke from his local clinic in Enfield, saving him time and a long drive.
If I have a problem, I have to call them on the telephone, and it's difficult sometimes to get in.
I have all your results from Duke. It's a barrier for their health care. It presents some obstacles that, had we not been in a rural setting, they probably would not have to deal with.
Let's go ahead and do an NIH stroke scale on her. And we'll,
Next, what it's like for folks living in a rural community that has reliable high-speed internet.
We need it. We depend on it.
For more than 100 years, the North Carolina League of Municipalities has been advocating for our cities and towns, serving as a single voice for everyone working for a better North Carolina. Hi, I'm Paul Meyer, Executive Director of the North Carolina League of Municipalities. We have a rich and diverse tapestry of cities, towns, and residents across North Carolina, all with unique needs. Our mission at the League of Municipalities is to help cities and towns better meet those needs so that all North Carolinians can enjoy economic opportunity and a great quality of life. The documentary that you are seeing today makes clear that reliable, affordable internet service is not a luxury. It's required if all parts of our state are to thrive economically, educationally, and professionally. At the North Carolina League of Municipalities, we believe in cities and towns working as one to advance all. Thank you for viewing this important documentary making the case of better broadband for all.
Wilson's located about 45 miles east of Raleigh in the coastal plain area of North Carolina. My family moved here in 1962, and at that time, Wilson was primarily an agricultural economy. We were known as the world's greatest tobacco market.
Where do you go, 16? 16 on an avenue.
After the decline in tobacco production and textile jobs moving overseas, Wilson's leaders knew they needed to do something.
Work is changing. People work differently. The people in the workforce, it's all different. And one thing we saw as a key to that is that communications and the ability to move data and move it reliably and quickly was going to be a big factor in preparing for the future workforce and the future jobs.
Wilson wanted to partner with its local phone and cable companies to build a fiber optic network to provide high-speed internet. When they declined, Wilson decided to build the network itself.
People were excited about having this network built, and you may not think of this as a challenge, but it was almost hard to manage the demand. People wanted the network. They wanted us to hurry up and get it built.
18 months and $35 million later, Wilson was totally wired in 2010.
Wilson would probably be known as the first gigabit city in the state of North Carolina.
Meaning its Greenlight fiber optic network can deliver a gigabit per second, 40 times the minimum standard for high-speed internet.
Our fiber optic network was designed, number one, is to provide state-of-the-art, fast communication. It had to be extremely reliable.
What do we have here?
33-year-old female with a past medical history of hypertension and diabetes.
The network helps make technology like telestroke work.
The bandwidth is critical to the technology working properly and being reliable.
Right, just can you look straight ahead at my nose?
When a patient comes into Wilson Medical Center's ER showing stroke symptoms, Telestroke can connect them to a specialist at Duke University Medical Center in Durham.
So I've given her an NIH score of 1, and we've already gotten a CT scan, which you should be able to see on your end. So essentially, a Duke neurologist is virtually here in the emergency room with us, helping us evaluate the patient and to determine the course of care.
And then we'll check some vitals, and if she meets criteria, we can consider TPA.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Coles. I appreciate it. And it basically allows their neurology department to partner with us to deliver care to people of Wilson. So they don't have to drive to Durham or take an ambulance or a helicopter to Durham to get the care that they need. They can come here to Wilson and get the highest quality care right out of the box.
So for direction of movement, try to use a concentration gradient term, okay?
Wilson's Greenlight network helps students work online at home or anywhere else.
Well, in the 21st century, that's very important. Having those resources with the fast speed internet throughout the semester keeps our kids on track to be successful in their classrooms and ultimately graduate and be successful at the next level, either in college or career.
Chemistry of life, all right.
Hunt High School senior Garrett Johnson says he's on the network for about 90% of his schoolwork.
Without it, I would definitely not have the grades I have now.
Garrett's taking 4 classes at Wilson Community College, mostly from home.
All 4 of my online classes are 100% online. I never have to go to the college.
Garrett's sister Emma is in 10th grade at Hunt High. She says she does about 40% of her schoolwork from home using the Greenlight network.
If I didn't have connection, I couldn't do my homework, and I would have to hurry and rush to do it at school.
She says that would hurt her grades.
Just the fact that they have it and that it works, they don't have to worry about that one thing slowing them down.
And without it?
I can just imagine we'd have to get in the car, take them somewhere else to sit and do homework instead of being at home.
We have had some businesses that have said they have located to Wilson because of the network.
It's definitely a key factor.
Rich Wilson is CEO of Tresbu Digital.
We do business process and application development to help companies run better.
Two of his biggest North American clients are McAfee and Royal Caribbean Cruises.
For both of those companies, we provide continuous support, which means we need continuous reliable connectivity, and sometimes that can be embarrassing if it's not there, and sometimes it can be a real security threat.
Tresbu has 2 offices in North America and 2 in India.
In this day and age, a distributed workforce is part of every company's DNA.
Wilson's Greenlight network helps him teleconference with employees in his company's other offices.
Being able to put a face to a name and sort of collaborate in real time with visuals is super helpful.
Next, the controversial law that hindered other cities and counties from installing their own broadband networks like Wilson's.
I think part of it was the fear of government intrusion into the private sector.
So what's the answer to filling North Carolina's broadband gaps?
The answer is always money.
This documentary has been underwritten with help from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, an organization that champions local decision-making to build an economy that works for everyone. ILSR advocates strategies to ensure fast, affordable, and reliable internet access for all. In North Carolina, ILSR is working with local groups in a coalition to improve local internet choice. Visit nc.localbroadband.org to learn more.
The Gig East Exchange exists so people can come together and collaborate, grow, discuss entrepreneurship, and learn how to run a business that will thrive in today's economy. Come see us in Wilson or visit gigeast.com to learn more.
To watch the WRAL documentary Disconnected on demand anytime, go to WRALdocumentary.com and all of these streaming platforms. You can also join the conversation about this issue by following WRAL Doc on Facebook and Twitter. In many ways, North Carolina is a leader in high-speed internet access.
We have some of the absolute best broadband situations in the whole United States.
In our state's capital, 3 providers offer gigabit service.
There's only maybe 2 places in the United States where that's possible. North Carolina has the best school network of broadband in the country. We now have fast broadband to every single school in the state, and they can't give out homework that uses broadband because a lot of the kids go home and they don't have it.
So just how many people in our state lack a broadband connection?
So the federal government counts broadband, and they do it by census block. And if one person in that census block has good broadband, they say the whole census block has good broadband. And it may literally only be that one person. Nationwide, the FCC says 14 million people have no broadband at their houses. We think it's double that number, and we don't have the exact number in North Carolina. It's certainly not small. There's a lot of people in North Carolina without good broadband.
In 2011, after the city of Wilson installed its own fiber optic network, the legislature enacted regulations that stymied the efforts of other local governments to do the same.
Is it right for a local government to tax a local company and then use those taxes to compete with that company? We think that's unfair.
I think part of it was the fear of government intrusion into the private sector.
The ability to request a public hearing.
Representative Josh Dobson agrees that local governments should not be running their own high-speed internet service. But as someone who represents rural areas in western North Carolina, he understands the lack of broadband access and the problems it creates.
1 out of every 2 students at Avery High School, where I grew up, where I went to high school, does not have access to high-speed internet. When I see students that I represent having to go to McDonald's to get internet, that's unacceptable to me.
Dobson co-sponsored the Fiber NC Act in 2019. It would allow local governments to partner with private companies to provide broadband.
Cities and counties will not be operating it, they'll just be building the infrastructure, and then they'll lease that infrastructure to the private sector to actually manage and run the broadband in underserved areas. The counties and cities would have to come up with their own funding.
Every lawyer tells us that it's still a prohibition, and so there's still no cities wanting to do this. You have to completely enable the local folks to find their own solutions. That will eventually fix it. Or we're going to end up with broadband deserts where nobody lives there.
Dawson says there are cities and counties wanting to partner with private providers, which the Fiber NC Act would allow. The state is also offering $15 million a year in grants over 10 years to private providers. It's to help them cover the cost of bringing high-speed internet to rural areas.
That's a great start, and the trajectory's in the right direction, but it needs to be an all-hands-on-deck, whatever it takes.
Dawson agrees.
Those kind of small amounts of money are not going to solve the problem, but they're all gratefully taken. It's a nice start, but they need to make it a lot larger.
Dawson says the legislature could do more.
The state can afford $20 or $30 million a year grant program. They could find that easily in the budget.
But Dawson says even that isn't enough.
We can't raise that much money in North Carolina to fix it. The federal government has to help.
The FCC is awarding $16 billion in grants to rural communities to improve internet access, but
the cost to build nationwide is hundreds of billions, so $16 billion is not going to get you there, but it's a really good down payment.
Dawson says policymakers need to consider the cost of not having high-speed internet.
You can't talk to your bank, you can't talk to the government, you can't talk to your employer. You can't hook up to the corporate LAN and download a file you forgot to bring home. You just can't do stuff that people with broadband don't think twice about doing. Every one of those adds up to be a cost.
So they're sitting in the capital.
What's the cost? Goes and sits outside the library 4 nights a week for 3 hours so her kids can do their homework using the Wi-Fi at the library. People without broadband are being left behind from the rest of the economy. They're just not participating in the modern economy.
People living in Enfield and many other rural communities understand that.
It's almost like a muscle spasm. You know?
Healthcare workers know what reliable high-speed internet could mean for their patients.
A lot of people in this area, they don't drive. They either walk or ride their bike. So being able to see a healthcare provider is a plus. But if we had something else to help them with their care, like the internet, it would be great.
Just follow the leader.
Educators know what it could mean for students and their parents.
I'm sure it would be much better to be able to let your child use the internet at home rather than you having to sit in a parking lot waiting for your child to finish an assignment.
Business owners know what it could mean to their bottom line.
It would mean doing business with people from all over the world on a daily basis.
And towns struggling economically know what it means in their efforts to attract new business.
That level of accessibility to broadband and high-speed internet changes how we look on the map.